Hello, and welcome back to Nick Up, the ADHD podcast. I'm Kyle, the host. We're on series 1, episode 7. This is going to be the last episode of this series before I take a bit of a different direction or a different approach. So if you've been listening, then thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate any sort of engagement that I've had from anyone at all. It doesn't go unnoticed, and I really do appreciate it. Any feedback has been real positive. So yeah, I wanted to just say thank you for that. Um, Today we're on RSD Vol.3, and it's not because I haven't got anything else to talk about, because I do. I've got a lot of other topics I can go on to, but from the engagement that I've had, um, a lot of it has been questions around RSD, and I think that there's still some misunderstanding with it. So you have to accept my apologies if I repeat some stuff, but I'm trying to do this in a foolproof way where it's easily understandable for everybody. Um, that being said, I'm not going to just completely repeat everything I've said. I'm gonna hit it from a different angle, give some examples, etc. I'm gonna try and do it in a way where people stay engaged. There's also a couple other things I'll be touching on along the way. Obviously, it's not the easiest for me to stay on track constantly with one topic. I'm obviously living with an ADHD brain, so everything that I'm talking on, as much as I have notes written down and some form of script to follow, I still go off track. It's just normal for me. So getting back into RSD, um, one of the things I touched on is about how people miss a lot of things with it, um, and that it's a lot of the time seen as just being sensitive or being difficult or not handling criticism well. Um, the best way to understand this is that it's the majority of the time it's not a decision. Okay, it's like being hit with something. And if you're listening and thinking, I've always had this problem, but I never knew what it was, that's why I'm doing Vol.3, okay? Because people know that there's issues, they just don't know why. And if you don't know why, you end up blaming yourself or blaming your partner or just accepting some sort of lazy label like I know I'm just a bit too much sometimes. This episode is to answer the whys, but explained through real life examples and stories and how it looks or what it feels like, so that you can actually recognize yourself in it. So this isn't some sort of weird science lecture. Okay. What's meant by RSD? When people say RSD, they usually describing a cluster of experiences. Something happens, your brain decodes it as rejection, as judgment or criticism, disrespect, disapproval, or some sort of social threat, okay? And your reaction comes out fast. Sometimes it's snapping, sometimes it's going quiet, sometimes it's avoidance, apologizing too much. And then with all of that comes replaying it in your head afterwards. It could even be hours later. And I need to be clear about this, okay? There's a lot of things I need to be clear about. But RSD is not a personality trait, okay? It's not a moral failing. You may have heard me say that previously. It's not that you're a bad person. It's more like your alarm threshold is low for social threat. And once it's set off, it can take a long time to settle it down again. Just a quick side note as well on something else that has been mentioned. because there's so much misinformation online about ADHD and medication. Honestly, it's painful. I literally I can't bear to even look online anymore. Um, ADHD is not something that you cure. Okay, it isn't. It is. You cannot cure ADHD. It's neurodevelopmental. It's how your brain is wired and was wired. Okay, and medication doesn't cure it either. What medication can do for some people is change what's going on with your brain chemistry and signaling, mainly around dopamine and noradrenaline, which are involved in attention, motivation, impulsivity or your impulse control, and emotional regulation. Okay. Now, the simplest way to explain this is that it can help the brakes engage quicker. Not perfectly, not every time, and not for everyone, all right? But sometimes it gives you that extra fraction of a second where you can pause, choose your words, or not get fully hijacked. Something to remember if you've listened to any of the previous episodes is that I said about my neurologist saying to me that she would change my life, and me feeling some sort of way because it then changed to, I'll give you an extra second to think. Okay. That extra second can be 10 minutes. That extra second can be days. And that is what changed my life. So that isn't the same for everybody, okay? But it can be. And I'm the living proof of that. But some people describe it like I can finally use the tools that I already knew was there. Kind of like sharpening your steel. But I'm not trying to sell it to you, okay? I'm not trying to push it on you. I'm just saying for me, it's been a huge benefit. Some people get a partial benefit. Some don't take medication every day or at all. The point is just this: if it helps, it's assistance. Okay, it's not a cure, and you are still you. Okay, that needed to be brushed up and clarified. So now back to RSD, and why you might not even know that it is RSD. What's going on? Okay, a lot of people don't recognize RSD because it doesn't always show up like a meltdown. All right, sometimes it's tiny things like a pause or a tone shift or a facial expression, a text that feels cold, being corrected, a message like, well, we need to talk. And you don't think, right, I'm experiencing RSD here. You think along the lines of, they're being rude, they're off with me, they don't respect me, I'm being judged, I'm in trouble, I've messed up. So here's the simple way to spot it. If it's fast or if it's out of scale with the trigger with what's being said, if your brain immediately turns it into a big message about you or your relationship, for example, and if that afterwards you replay it and feel shame or you want to fix it right now, then that's the pattern to follow to understand that this is probably RSD. Now, what I'm going to do is try and run some examples, okay, so that you can try and recognize it. I'm going to say these quite quick because most of you will know exactly what I mean. In work, for example, you get something like, oh, can you pop in for a chat later? And sometimes your stomach drops like you're in trouble or something's wrong, like you're going to lose your job. With a text, you could get like a K. And I know nobody likes nobody likes a K. You know, it's a shitty way to respond to a message with just one letter, all right? But you suddenly you get that feeling like, what's that all about then? You know, someone corrects you on something that you know as a fact. Now, this is a big one for me because my reaction is always instant. It's never calm. If it's something that I know 1,000,000%, say if it's something that I've done, that, you know, it's not there to be debated, like I've done it, then that can escalate so fast. Okay. Things like exclusion as well. If you find out there's a plan and you weren't included, it's not just disappointment, it's something deeper. Okay. Now posting online is another one. To everybody, it might not be relatable, but for me, I've created music in the past. I've tried to be creative, I suppose, and never really got the recognition or the fan base, I suppose, that I wanted. So if I've posted stuff online before and it gets ignored, um, or no one acknowledges it, I'll just delete it as if I've been embarrassed in public. Um, like there's egg on my face. Um, Tone shifts are another thing. If someone says your name in a different way, your body can react in different ways, and I think that that's quite normal and can obviously happen in neurotypical brains too. I wouldn't say it's trauma. It's not trauma, but things like school. A teacher says your name in one way, and then I got progressively worse through school, so it would then be said in a different way, and then eventually it would be sort of shouted, because patience is being worn out, and it's the same person repeating something over and over again. So I think that that's quite a normal response, but I used it as an example here because your body will react in that way, um, like a threat response. Um, Calm down never works with me, um, because all you really hear is calm down. If I ever hear calm down, it's just like all I ever think is like fuck off, because it's just like it's kind of just undermining everything, isn't it? Like if I could just calm down, I would. I don't need someone to tell me to calm down. I don't want to be angry. I'd love to be calm. So and the other thing is silence. If someone goes quiet and you can start building this whole story in your head, that's no response, that sort of thing. You can start to make these things up in your head and start to run away with it. Um, so a lot of that doesn't sound like sensitivity. It feels like your brain's just detected something important. So we can map this out properly. Okay, like it goes into parts and how things show up, and um, I'm going to try and break that down. Okay, so that there are a few common ways RSD shows up on the outside. So you have what other people see, and what you might recognize in yourself. So there's modes is the best way that I've been able to describe it. Um, you have a pushback mode, which is the obvious one that can look like snapping, or like, what do you mean by that? Arguing, over explaining to prove that you aren't wrong, or correcting someone's tone immediately. Inside it isn't. I suppose it often isn't that I want conflict. It's more like I'm being judged or being spoken down to, and I ain't going to be made to feel like this. So it comes out as protection, and sometimes it's way too strong. Then the next mode's exit mode, and this gets misread as not caring because it can look like just leaving the room, mid convo, changing the subject, or just picking your phone up and saying, "Oh, I ain't doing this now." Inside is often that if I stay here, I'll just make it worse. So I'm just going to shut up. Um, Not always avoidance of responsibility, it's often damage control. Um, Shutdown mode is probably the most misunderstood one because that's when it's sort of quiet, vacant, and blank. I'm keeping this one brief here because I'm going to break it down properly later. But shutdown can look like silence, you know, blank faces. I don't really know. Being present, but just nothing behind the eyes. That one's for my mate Ben. That's a ongoing joke that we've got. Something that he misunderstood at the time it was said to him. Yeah. So shout out to Ben, man. He's a good guy. Got a lot of time for him. Um, yeah, for a lot of ADHDers, shutdown isn't punishment. It's I just don't have safe access to words right now. There's no point in me speaking right now. Or you can't piece your words together properly. But I'm gonna come back to that properly anyway. And then you get into peacekeeping mode, and that can be like apologizing, over agreeing, and sometimes to a neurotypical person, this probably looks like good behavior and wanting to get on, but it can be extremely unhealthy because it can look like things like instant apologies or agreeing when you don't agree, or taking responsibility of something just to end the tension because it's becoming overwhelming. But inside, it's kind of just like, oh, just do anything to make this stop, like, at any cost. And then later, it turns into resentment, and that's where it's really unhealthy. Um, there's tells that it is RSD. Okay, um, it often has its tells because if it's fast, out of scale, loaded with a big message, inconsistent across people, and there's an aftershock, then there's probably a huge percentage, if you have ADHD, is RSD. Okay. Um, the next thing is something called 5 minute proof. Okay, I had to digest this to someone, because a big giveaway is what happens afterwards in these situations. If you calm down a bit and then you think like, why have I done that for? Or like, that wasn't even what I'm trying to do, and now I've made it worse. Like, that isn't you being fake, okay? That's you coming back online. That's like you literally pressing reset on your laptop, it coming back on because it was acting slow, or it wasn't doing what you want it to do. It was behaving in a way that you didn't want it to. And you've hit reset and restart, and now it's working smoothly again. Okay. That's, if you get that, again, it ties in perfectly. Part B is about what it feels like in the body. And this is where people stop calling it attitude and start understanding it. Okay. For a lot of ADHDers, the body reacts first. And that isn't because you're dramatic, that is because the alarm response is fast. And how I've come up with this part is there's two common body modes. Okay. You have wired and flat. They're the ones that I've experienced the most. Wired can feel like things like a tight chest, or like heat in your face, jaw clenched, grinding your teeth, heart going a bit quicker than usual, and urgency. And this is where things like snapping in defensiveness or over talking happens a lot. Flat can feel like it sounds, I suppose, head's not working how it's supposed to. Heavy body, lethargic, slow processing, can't really speak because there's just not much to say, just not, you can't engage in anything, and you probably look like you don't care even if you do care. And this is where the silence and vacancy can happen. Neither's good, and neither's good or bad, they're just two outputs of the same thing, that same alarm response that I've referred to. Um, and the reason that the body reacts, let's say you're going to watch a football match, right? And a ball comes flying at your face, right? You flinch naturally. You don't sit and have a board meeting and say, right, we need to think about whether this is a threat or not. Your body moves first, okay? Your explanation comes second. Same thing as if you was walking in the road, and a car's coming at you, right? You react first. Like, you're not going to stand there and think about it, and that's because the brain has fast threat circuitry designed to protect you quickly. Okay, it shifts your nervous system into that fight or flight or freeze before your thinking brain has built a tidy narrative. So with RSD is no different. When your brain decodes a social cue as this could be rejection, judgment, or danger, the body reacts like it's massive, even if it's a small thing. It reacts in that same flinchy way. And that's why calling RSD sensitive just completely misses the point. It's like a smoke alarm going off in a house, right, from burnt toast. You wouldn't ever say, oh, this house is so sensitive, would you? You would say, The alarm in this house, or that smoke alarm, is sensitive. And this is something that probably makes it even clearer, I suppose. Imagine that there's an alarm that once it goes off, if it goes off for 5 minutes, it rings the police. It auto calls them. Okay, if that alarm's too sensitive, the police are constantly called, and that's not because nobody wants chaos. Okay, but it's just the sensitivity of the alarm is wrong, and once it's triggered, it's hard to stop it instantly. That's what RSD can feel like, and this is where I need to be careful because I've spoken about this in another episode. Okay, the point isn't to just leave someone alone with reassurance. Okay, the point is to not try and solve the whole relationship while someone is in that wired state. Okay, reassurance is information, but the alarm is a state that they're in. So the middle ground is something that I call a connected pause. Okay, you stay present and you reduce the heat, but you return quickly. So in a conversation, that would sound like, look, I'm here, I'm not rejecting you, I want to get this right. Okay, just like give it 5 minutes and we'll talk properly. Okay, like it doesn't have to be said that way. You can obviously come up with like your own way of doing it. Something like, babe, look, I'm listening. Just like, let's take 5 minutes because I want to get this right. Okay, because that's what's really important. Um, Tones are also a massive thing because if you're wired right, tone leaks will come out of your body. If you made your chest tight right now, you tensed up and you clenched your jaw and try and speak, your voice is going to be different, even if you're trying to make sure that it's not right. Then your partner will react to that tone that you come with, okay, as disrespect. An ADHD will then push back as that's judgment, and then the alarm gets louder. And now the argument isn't actually about the original topic. It now becomes about the way that you spoke, your tone, and how you come across, or respect. And that spiral there is where all of the damage happens. That's where it starts to become bigger problems, okay, and it's harder to get hold of. Um, and sometimes this is something that gets brought up about RSD and feelings, about being able to catch it early. Is there a way of like stopping it, preventing it? Sometimes catching it early is literally impossible. Okay, sometimes you only realize that the alarm was even going off after the words have come out. For me, it's like that near enough every single time. um for me, I get extremely defensive and sort of, who are you talking to? What do you mean? Like, what? Who the fuck? What do you mean? And you could probably like even hear it in my voice. Like I've got this. I've got this. I've gone through so many of these situations and been in so many of them situations that I've now almost come up with like my own approach. It's like a mode that I go into. It's so defensive and sometimes completely unnecessary. But I'm not in that mode by choice. Okay. That isn't by choice. That is just how my brain is wired. It's just how my brain works. It's just what my brain is telling me. Now, if your brain is telling you to do something, there's a massive chance you're going to do it, because that's how we work as humans, right? Our brains are our control center. So if you're waiting for a parcel, you're at home, right? You've been waiting for a parcel all day. You get a knock on the door. You get that response, don't you? Right. Get to the door as quick as possible. You get up and you walk. So your brain doesn't even need to tell you to walk. You just get up and walk, don't you? So this is what's happening here with RSD. It's not it's not like um you're thinking about it, or do I get up and do this? It's just, right, boom, this is my response, this is what it's going to be. So it can be uncontrollable. And if you don't even if you don't catch it early, trying to repair it still counts. Okay, that's a key part about this. um Part C in this is about what the inner story sounds like. Okay, um because this is the part that makes people feel broken, because it doesn't arrive like a calm thought, it arrives like a conclusion, okay? And usually it's not even about the topic, it's about the message that your brain thinks is being received. um Three common inner story themes are rejection, things like they don't want me, they're done; judgment, like they must think I'm stupid, like that's embarrassing; or safety, okay, where you think that something's wrong. um so you get things that are anger. So it'd be things like, don't talk to me like I'm fucking stupid. Who do you think you are? Like I just said, that's how I can come across, and I know that it's something I'm trying to address still. Now I'm still not at peace with that entirely, but I'm getting better. I'm at least trying to make progress. You get the fear ones that it kind of, if things are going to turn into a row, or you can feel like someone's pulling away from you, or you have that thought like, if I don't fix this now, then we're not going to be okay. Like, this needs to be resolved now, which can also come across as pressure. And then you get like the shame flavored ones, where it's kind of like, oh fuck man, I'm too much, or like, I always ruin it. Like, I used to say one a lot, like, why can I not just be fucking normal? Like, I just want to be normal. I just want to be a normal person. Like, I don't want to be great. I don't want to be this. I just want to be normal. I just want to be able to live a normal life. But that was a long time ago, before medication. So we good now. Um, another way I try to explain this is that it's like subtitles. Okay, so like, if someone says a sentence, let's say that you're watching a film in French, right? Your brain basically adds the subtitles as the wrong thing being said. So you'd be like watching a film and getting told the wrong thing. How many of you don't know that that's going on, by the way? Just a side thought. But it's not facts, okay? It's just a message. And a lot of the time that would be things like, somebody said something to me. Now the subtitles that I get is judgment, rejection, disrespect. So I then react, okay? Um, and when there's higher stakes on the line, okay, it's one of the reasons it gets louder with partners, and that's because the stakes are higher. I'm not going to break that down properly right now. I'm going to do that in a minute because it explains a lot, okay? But staying on this topic and what I mentioned about the whole shame thing, um, after it happens, you do often get that, why am I like this, or like I've ruined it, or I'm hard work, things like that. Um, Shame actually fuels avoidance, withdrawal, resentment. And that's why invalidation is extremely, extremely destructive, because it just confirms to an ADHD brain the worst inner story possible. So, a little internal check, right? Ask yourself this: am I reacting to what happened, or am I reacting to what my brain has processed this as? Because that one question separates facts from fear. Okay, that's something good to understand. And the next section here is clarity is safety. Okay, this is super personal. Um, for me, it's probably something that runs my whole life. Okay, it's one of the main reasons RSD becomes a huge problem for me, and that is clarity. Okay, I rely on clarity heavily, probably more than anyone I know. And I don't mean clarity like I'm trying to control someone or to win an argument, okay? I mean clarity in the way that my brain needs clarity and facts to feel safe. Because for me, this is the pattern that it goes in, okay? Clarity gives me facts, okay? And then facts gives me understanding. And understanding lets me decide what I actually think, and then I can regulate how I feel in that order. And when that order gets interrupted, when things are unclear, my brain doesn't treat it like a minor confusion. it treats the uncertainty like risk. So what unclear feels like to me isn't just I'm not sure. Unclear can feel like something's missing, there's a problem that I can't see, um, I'm about to be judged and I ain't going to see it coming, or I'm going to be rejected and I'm completely blind to it. So the brain starts scanning, and then that scanning can come out as loads of questions, circling around the same topic, needing it said like slowly or like, completely bluntly, which I prefer, um, or wanting more certainty than comfort. From the outside, that can look like over talking. I get that. I understand that. But inside of me, it often feels like I'm really, really not trying to argue. Okay, I'm just trying to settle this so that my head can relax. That's all that's going on inside, nothing else. Now, partners walking on eggshells is another topic I'll touch on. Um, I think probably a bit later on in the podcast. But I think with this whole eggshells thing, because it's something I've discussed recently. When partners say they're walking on eggshells, I think sometimes they mean the general atmosphere at home, um, unapproachable, unpredictable, um, a house tone that shifts, and they don't know when it's safe to bring normal things up. And here's where the problem is: a lot of people use vague answers to keep the peace. Things like saying like, "Oh, what's up? Nothing. I'm fine. Don't worry about it." Now, those are normal phrases, but for clarity-driven ADHD brains, vague answers don't get close to closing that loop. They just keep it open, so the alarm just keeps buzzing. And I'm not saying that clarity is an excuse to interrogate someone or press forever, because it's obviously not. But clarity for me is a need, but it still needs to be done in a stable way. Okay. Sometimes the most grown-up thing to do is explain things bluntly, like I just said. I need clarity. I'm way too wired to talk properly. I'm going to take 5 and come back. Now, if I was to say how many times I actually do that, I don't really know. I don't know if I do that, but I only ever have good intentions. I only ever want peace, and because for me, peace is just that's what I'd love to have a life full of peace. That's it. I'm not a person that needs loads of attention or loads of anything. In all honesty, I just want a peaceful life, because I just feel like my life's been so hectic for so long and so unbalanced that if I was to get peace, I think that would be me happy and set forever. I've just never found it. But a practical thing that matters more than people think is how you open a clarity conversation. Okay, if the opener sounds like danger, something like we need to talk, or what's your problem, why are you like this, my brain hears threat, and then I lose access to calm language. But if the opening line signals safety, then I can stay present. So for me, it's more like, babe, can I just run something past you? Like, I'm not coming at you. I just need to understand it. It's the same topic, okay? It's just completely different nervous system responses that you're going to get. And this links straight into why partners get the loudest version sometimes, okay? Which I said that I would go on to. This is where partners feel attacked and ADHDers feel guilty, okay? Why does your partner sometimes get the strongest version? That's a question that I've been asked, okay? It's not because you respect them less. It's not because you're choosing to. It's not because they're doing more wrong than anyone else. All right. It's because in your nervous system, your partner is the highest, or, their higher stakes. Okay. Your partner affects your stability more than anyone else. Your home, your closeness, your belonging, your intimacy, your routine, your emotional safety. So your brain treats their signals like VIP notifications. A stranger's tone might be annoying, and, you know, a colleague's tone might be brushed off, but your partner's tone can land to you like, we're not okay, because the cost feels much bigger. If you misread a stranger, the cost is There is no cost in my world, you know. It's okay, I don't care, I'm probably never going to see you again, whatever. But if you misread your partner, your brain treats it like it could cost you everything. So the alarm scans harder, okay? And then you add another layer to that. And the other layer is huge, okay? It's masking and battery. Okay, a lot of ADHDers spend their day in performance mode, filtering and holding it together. That's another part people don't see. And when you get home and you've got less battery, let's say, home becomes where the pressure starts to leak. And it's not because your partner deserves less, it's because your system has less resource left. So you need to charge again now. And that's why partners can say things like, well, you're fine with everyone else, just not me. And it can be true, but not for the reason that they think. It's not because you're choosing to be worse at home. It's because home is higher stakes and you've got a lot less battery than you did have. And that's the pattern. That's not an excuse. That's just an explanation of how things work. Okay, so by the time something gets to you, it's like they're second hand. Get home from work and now they're second hand. They're not brand new like they was at the start of the day. There's some confusion modules, okay, around the same topic, with partners, because I wanted to touch quite heavily on partners in this episode. The first thing is, why are you fine with your friends and not me? Which I know I just touched on briefly, but partners can hear it like this, you know, you can control it, but not with me. But usually it's normally lower stakes with friends and performance mode with friends. With friends, if you misread a cue, it doesn't feel like your whole life shifts, but with your partner, it can. So the fix isn't perfect at home or be perfect at home. It's to build a stable process at home, because relationships don't require stable moods. Okay, moods are always going to shift with people's days and how they go and how people speak to them and so on. But a stable process is what helps things repair and get better over time. Um, Another one is, why can't you let it go and why do you keep coming back? I have already touched on this. So it isn't about control. 99% of the time, it's the brain trying to close that threat loop that I mentioned. Okay, so if the relationship feels unstable in your body, your brain will just keep scanning it until it feels stable. So you, as a partner, you might think that someone, you know, they're just trying to drag it out, but in reality, all this really happening is they're just trying to get back to that stable place where everything's clear. Okay. Um, Another one is about why do you go vacant? You know, why do you go so quiet? And this one is massive. I've had back and forths in my time, okay, with partners, people, about me going silent for long periods and being vacant, sometimes for no obvious reason. And instead of curiosity, it turned into sarcasm. Okay, it's not, "Are you okay? What's going on?" It would have been, yeah, "Oh, going silent on me again. Must be ADHD again." That sort of attitude. Okay, that is extremely detrimental for an ADHDer. Extremely probably doesn't justify it. Because shutdown is often not punishment. It's just normally overload. There's just too much going on. And how it comes out is, words aren't the safest or the best option right now. And if you shame it, then you train more of it. So then it's more shutdown. So if you want someone to come towards you, you can't punish them for needing to take a break. The best approach is that connected pause that I mentioned. I can see that you've gone quiet. I'm not attacking you. I'm here. Let's take this amount of time and then come back to it. But what I must mention about that, okay, is if you're a neurotypical partner with an ADHD partner and you say something along those lines, with a connected pause, okay, that you're not abandoning them. You want to revisit this, but let's take 10 minutes and come back. Please, and I promise you this is for everyone's best interest. Please give a time where you are going to return, okay? And not a time where you may return or you could forget. It is imperative, okay? Because it then starts to raise the alarm for RSD with abandonment, rejection again, because you've been forgotten about. It's this, okay? So that there is a very, very big part. So again, the eggshells thing, which I said I'd come back to. Partners don't feel like, they don't feel like they're like the ADHD can be approachable, or they don't know what version they're going to get, which again I've mentioned. Okay, ADHD can shift moods. That's real. That's true. That's not to be hidden from. Okay, so the goal isn't to promise stable mood. The goal is to get a stable process when the mood shifts. Okay, so stable processes can look like the example I've just given. Pause before it starts getting out of control and return quickly. Clarify what's going on, solve what the issue is, and then change something for the next time it happens, because there's a likelihood it's going to happen. Because I think the worst part for partners isn't necessarily the mood shift. I think it's the unpredictability plus the lack of repair, where there is no progress. Um, I've been in situations, numerous situations that I've been in life. Um, and I'm not gonna give anyone the privilege of being mentioned, um, because it could apply to numerous people, I suppose. But I've had people in my life that have said previously before, "Oh, you're just blaming everything on ADHD." And if you've ever lived inside an ADHD brain, um, it's unacceptable. It is probably the worst thing that can be said to an ADHDer. If you've never lived inside an ADHD brain, you might think it's reasonable, but I promise you it's not, because it turns explanation into shame. It blocks the curiosity, it blocks the teamwork, and it blocks repair. All it does is it teaches the ADHD that you are fundamentally unacceptable. That's it. And what that did for me is it just turned me into a hermit. Emotionally, shut off, not available, physically, not about literally everything. I just become a hermit. I was just a shell of myself. Um, and it just causes resentment, pure resentment, because you then start to question everything. You start questioning, you know, why am I here? What are we doing this for? What is this about? What? Like, there's so many answers that just get left open. Um, and that's not because I want it to be difficult, but because when you finally find a language for what's happening and the person closest to you mocks it, you stop trying. The trust dies. Trust, it literally dies. Now, one trust is dead. When anything's dead, you can't bring it back. It's dead. The trust is gone. It's finished. And if you allow yourself, or you allow your partner, or your partner gets themselves to that position where trust has been killed, you're in a sticky situation. It's the easiest way that I can explain it. Um, Now, mentioning this for me is this is heavy, extremely. But please understand, this is not for any form of sympathy, or this is not a grief episode. I really don't want this to be um misleading, let's say, right? Okay. This is purely for people that are really struggling. I have severe ADHD, okay? So if there are people with similar symptoms or have been in similar are in a similar position to me, and you feel like you can't go on, you're going to give up, for example. This is purely for some inspiration, I suppose, and to gain some belief. Like honestly, I promise you that things can get better. Like honestly, like I was at the lowest point of my life. Okay, I was undiagnosed, unmedicated, and then I went through having a stillborn baby in that same extreme period. Okay, that changed my whole nervous system, and I felt that made my alarm so loud, and not just in relationships, in life in general. I questioned everything. I felt like reality isn't safe. And I'm saying that because sometimes what people call sensitivity is pain memory. And pain memory plus ADHD and an alarm that goes crazy and doesn't really settle properly or easily, in actual fact, it's actually fucked. That is a combination of destruction, self destruction. So the context matters. But where the hope comes into it, and this is the part that I really want people to hear, is I went through a period of neuroplasticity, okay? And if you don't know what that is, it's the remolding of your brain or reprogramming of your brain. And I can't explain how much this helped and affected me. It was genuinely encouraging because I had so many unhealthy habits, and I still have some. I've not addressed everything that I want to. I've mentioned the way that I gamble previously. That's one of the problems and real unhealthy habits that I have. But I've addressed so much. Um, so many unhealthy habits that I thought I'd never change, or that I didn't even think was possible to change. And I know that loads of you listening probably think, yeah, that could be me. Because ADHD isn't curable, but patterns can change. And when you get the right support and the right window, you can reprogram things that you thought were permanent. So if you feel stuck, you are not doomed, okay? You might just need to take a different approach. And it's possible. There's also something to touch on is a quick reality check for partners, okay? Because I don't want anybody to listen to this and go away thinking that they have to tolerate behavior that's not okay. All right. Because I don't stand for any form of violence against females. It's not what I'm about. Um, it's not how I ever intend to be. Now, don't get me wrong. We've all been in situations where things get heated. We say things out of line that, we don't want to say. It can even go on, there can be ongoing feuds between exes. I know I'm guilty of that. I've said numerous things in the past that, I kind of wish I didn't, or never really meant, but just in the heat of the moment, things can come out in ways that are hurtful. But there's a big difference between that. If they're conversations that are between two people and they're going back and forth, that doesn't mean to say that it's okay and it's justified. It just means that you're in a bit of a cycle that you need to try and break, and that needs to be done from both sides. But in this situation, what I want to explain is that early on it's normal to understand each other um, less than you probably should or you want to, because a lot of this is just literally a confusion stage. Okay, the ADHD might not even understand themselves. You could have been together for a month. You could have been together for 20 years. If you've never looked at behaviors and you've just got on with it, you've never tried to address it, that 20 years can feel like you're still at month one. So trying to understand it is understandable that you aren't going to get things. Okay, you might understand patterns, but the reasoning behind it, this is what I'm trying to give the information on, because misunderstandings happen. That's why this episode exists. RSD education is for situations where the alarm goes up, it comes out messy, but there's repair afterwards and improvement over time. Now, shutdown and needing space can be protective. And even I don't, even that sort of I want to leave, that can be genuine panic in the moment. But there is a line. And the line isn't silence equals punishment. Okay. The line is coercion, safety risk, repeated cruelty, and repair over time. If any of these become the pattern, then it's something you need to revisit. Okay. Fear that runs the relationship long term. You feel unsafe raising normal things. Okay. Cruelty in terms of, humiliation, personal attacks. Um, those things aren't, that's not RSD. Um, Coercive or unsafe escalation, things like blocking you leaving rooms or cornering you, throwing things, smashing objects, using silence as a leverage, things like I'm not going to speak to you until you apologize, or weird stuff. And also never no repair, no ownership or no return, no improvement if you're always cleaning it up. These are things to understand that, right, this is probably bigger than just RSD now. Okay, that's when the understanding alone isn't going to fix anything, and it's when you need boundaries and you need some proper support in reality. Okay. um that is just something I wanted to touch on, and I felt I need to touch on, because this whole thing can be misconstrued into something that is not. And I'm not trying to create an environment where making excuses for ADHD is acceptable, because it's not. But understanding how it works is going to relieve a lot of the issues that you're experiencing, in my opinion. Um, so I like to leave this with five things to take away from this to try and remember. Okay. Number one is RSD is not attitude. Okay. It's a fast threat response to a message that the brain thinks that it's received. Okay. Number two is higher stakes makes the alarm louder. Partners aren't always the target, but they're normally the trigger point because they matter more. Number three is shutdown, and shutdown isn't always punishment. Sometimes it's just, I can't speak without making it worse, so I'm just going to be silent. Number four is how clarity is not control. Okay. For a lot of ADHDers, clarity is safety. Vague answers keep that alarm running. So it probably isn't going to stop until they know what's what. And five is you don't fix your situation by shaming it. You fix it with a stable process and repairing it over time. And that is volume 3 of RSD. I really, really, really hope that I've touched on things that people wanted some clarification around, because honestly, I'm so passionate about this. I really am. Like, I want to help as many people as possible. I'm not one of these people that say, oh, if I help one person, that's enough. Like, bollocks to that. That does not sit well with me. Like, I want to help as many people as possible, and I'll keep pushing and striving to do that. I really will. Um, so taking things away from this, if you're the ADHDer, try and learn your patterns and how you can repair them or control them or have some form of control over them. Okay. And if you're a partner and you're listening, try and switch your judgment for curiosity, because invalidation destroys trust. And once that trust is gone, it's gone. is gone and there's no coming back from it. And if this is a person that you love and you truly love, don't run that risk, because it's probably not worth it. Um, Again, as I always say, thank you for listening. I hope that everyone has a prosperous 2026. Honestly, I really hope anybody listening hits their goals, if they have any targets that they have, anything that you want to achieve or learn. I hope all of that goes how you want it to go. I really do. Um, I really appreciate everybody listening. If there's any content in the podcast that you think can help other people, then be my guest to share it along, because that helps me try and expand what I'm trying to do here. And more importantly, it gets the advice out to the people who may need this help to be able to function on a daily basis like I do. So, yeah, again, thank you for listening. I'm Kyle, the host. This is Nick Up, the ADHD podcast. You done know.